All right, so today we're diving deep into some fascinating insights about, well, men.
Oh, men.
Specifically, we're going to be taking excerpts from a book called The Queen's Code,
Okay.
and also some notes from these women, Kimberly and Karen, who are learning about like men and relationships from this wise woman named Claudia.
I see.
It's really interesting because we get to kind of peek behind the scenes and see how they're trying to understand men better,
Yeah.
avoid those classic relationship pitfalls.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you, some of this information, it really challenges a lot of the assumptions that we women make about men.
Oh, I bet.
And to help us unpack all of this, we have an expert in gender dynamics and communication with us today.
Excited to be here.
So one of the things that really struck me early on is how Kimberly and Karen, they came into these sessions with Claudia with some pretty intense preconceived notions about men.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they were just throwing around words like clueless, insensitive, even stupid.
Wow. Strong words.
Right. But Claudia, she's she's wise, right? So she simply asks, compared to what?
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how ingrained certain assumptions can be about men.
For sure.
It makes us examine, like, well, what standards are we even using to judge their behavior?
Yeah, what are we comparing them to?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it. Have you ever, like, fallen into that trap of comparing, your partner to some, like, idealized version of perfection?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think we all have.
Right.
Yeah.
This perfect person that, embodies all the traits that we value as women.
Right. Exactly.
Always communicative, emotionally attuned, maybe even a little psychic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reading our minds, anticipating our needs, all that.
Right. But, it's an impossible standard.
Yeah, totally unreal.
For anyone to live up to, let alone someone who might not even value those same traits.
Exactly. Different values, different ways of seeing the world. We can't expect them to just magically align with ours.
Right. And Claudia really emphasizes this. She says, when we're constantly comparing men to this perfect person,
Yeah.
we're essentially viewing them as like defective women.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And no wonder so many relationships are just like filled with frustration and resentment,
Absolutely. It sets up this dynamic where we're always finding fault, always looking for what's missing. It's like
Yeah.
we're setting them up to fail.
Totally.
And I think that's where those three explanations come in that you were mentioning earlier.
Oh, yes. The three explanations.
Yeah.
Kimberly and Karen both admitted to, like, totally falling into this trap.
Which is?
He doesn't love me enough. He doesn't respect me enough. Or, the classic, he just doesn't care enough.
Right. Those are the go-to explanations for why he's not meeting our expectations.
Yeah, but it's so damaging.
Oh, absolutely. It's a recipe for self-doubt and insecurity.
Exactly. And it keeps us, stuck in this cycle of self-blame, right?
Yeah, it prevents us from truly understanding the men in our lives.
Yeah, it's like we're looking at them through this distorted lens. And that's where Claudia introduces this radical idea that could really change everything.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's this radical idea?
It's about looking for the good reason.
The good reason.
Yeah. Instead of assuming, like, the worst, we pause and consider, what if there's a perfectly valid reason behind his actions?
Okay, so even if we don't see it right away.
Even if we don't see it right away.
Interesting.
It's about recognizing that men, they have, their own internal logic, their own way of processing information and responding to the world.
So their brains are just wired differently.
It's not that their brains are wired differently. It's that sometimes that logic doesn't align with our own.
Okay, so it's not about them being wrong or intentionally trying to hurt us. It's about understanding that their way of thinking might be different.
Exactly. And Claudia, she says, it's about shifting our perspective from
Yeah.
like judgment to curiosity.
I like that.
Instead of asking, why did he do that?
Yeah.
We start asking ourselves, what if there's a good reason?
What if there's a good reason? I
Uh-huh.
love that.
And that simple shift, it can really open up a whole new world of understanding, I think.
It's like putting on a new pair of glasses and seeing things in a completely different light.
Totally. And it reminds me of this story that Kimberly shares about Raul, her boss.
Oh, yeah. What happened with Raul?
So initially she saw him as like uncaring, even a bit cruel, especially during their like month-end crunch time.
I see.
He's barely acknowledged her, wouldn't answer her questions directly.
Oh, so he was being kind of dismissive.
Yeah. And just seemed completely oblivious to the stress everyone was under.
Mm-hmm. Not very empathetic.
Right.
Yeah.
But remember what happened when she finally, like, asked him about it?
Oh, yeah. What did he say?
Instead of getting defensive, he explained that he was deliberately putting her in those challenging situations as a way of, like, preparing her for a leadership role.
Oh, wow. So he was actually trying to help her grow.
Exactly.
That's a great example of how assuming the good reason can completely change our perceptions.
Totally. And it's like she just removed this filter that had been, like, distorting her reality, you know?
It's amazing how our assumptions can create such a different experience of the same situation.
Yeah, and it highlights how important it is to, like, actually listen to men in a way that allows them to like, fully express themselves.
Yeah. And I think that's where this whole single focus thing comes in, right?
Yes, single focus.
Yeah.
Karen describes it as, like, men's brains being wired to focus on, like, one thing at a time.
Okay.
Now, you might be thinking, well, isn't everyone like that?
Right.
But Claudia, she's saying there's something, like, unique about how men approach this single focus.
Okay, I'm curious to hear more. What's so unique about it?
Imagine your partner, he's trying to, like, solve a complex problem at work.
Mm-hmm.
He's deep in thought, laser focused on finding a solution.
Okay, I can picture that.
Now imagine you interrupt him with, like, questions,
Yeah.
suggestions, or even worse, rephrased versions of the same question.
Yeah, that would be so frustrating.
Right.
Yeah, I can see how that would totally derail his train of thought.
Exactly. This is the essence of single focus.
Interesting.
And Karen, she describes this so vividly. She talks about waiting patiently, even when it feels excruciating, you know?
Yeah.
And imagining the man, like, going deeper and deeper into this vault to bring back the best possible answer.
Oh, I love that analogy. The vault.
Right. And you know what? Sometimes the answer is in that vault.
Uh-huh.
We gotta give them the space and the silence to retrieve it.
It's about trusting that they'll come back with something valuable if we give them the time and space they need.
Exactly.
And that can be a challenge for us women, right?
Boy, for sure.
We like to talk things out, process things out loud.
Yeah, but the key takeaway here is patience and truly listening without interruption. It can unlock a depth of communication that many women, they never experience with men.
That's a powerful thought. So we've got this perfect person, myth busted, the power of looking for the good reason, and this idea of single focus listening. We're just getting started, right?
Oh, we're just scratching the surface.
There's so much more to uncover about how these ideas play out in real life relationships.
Oh, yeah. We're going to dive deeper into the dynamics of punishment, the myth of the Princess Grace gene.
Ooh, interesting.
And even touch on some practical communication techniques that can help you connect with men on a whole new level.
I can't wait. So much good stuff ahead.
Stay tuned, because this deep dive is about to get even more interesting.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more from the Queen's Code.
Welcome back. I'm really curious to know if anything in that first part, like, particularly resonated with you. We uncovered some pretty interesting insights into how we perceive men and the assumptions we often bring into our relationships.
Absolutely. It's like we're peeling back layers of conditioning and discovering this whole new way of understanding men. And I think we've all been guilty of falling into that perfect person trap at some point.
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in that, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about, you know, what a perfect relationship should look like.
Totally.
What's so powerful about the Queen's Code is that it doesn't just leave us hanging with this, like, shattered worldview.
Yeah.
It offers a way forward, a way to rebuild our understanding of men from the ground up.
And a big part of that is this game-changing question. What if there's a good reason for everything men do?
Yeah, that question, when you truly embrace it.
It can be revolutionary. It shifts our focus from judging and criticizing to seeking understanding, allows us to approach our relationships with a sense of curiosity rather than accusation.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little more. Instead of automatically assuming that a man is misbehaving or being, like, intentionally hurtful, we pause and consider the possibility that there might be a valid reason behind his actions, a reason that makes perfect sense to him, even if it seems completely illogical to us.
And this isn't about making excuses for bad behavior.
Right.
It's about recognizing that men, they might process information differently. They might have different priorities. different ways of expressing their emotions.
And sometimes those differences can lead to like misunderstandings and conflicts if we're not careful.
Right, exactly.
So how do we put this good reason principle into practice?
Yeah.
Do you have any examples from the source material?
Absolutely. Kimberly's initial reaction to her coworker Jack is a great example. Remember, she always perceived him as lecherous and felt uncomfortable around him.
Oh yeah, she thought he was like always staring at her and making inappropriate comments.
Exactly. But when she applied that good reason question, she started to see things differently. She realized that perhaps his looks were simply a way of expressing, appreciation, maybe even admiration rather than lust.
Right.
And this shift in perspective, it completely transformed her experience.
It's like she finally took off those judgmental glasses and saw him as like a human being,
Yeah.
with his own motivations rather than a caricature of her own fears.
Precisely. And this brings us to another crucial point, the concept of women punishing men.
Or punishment.
Yeah. Both Kimberly and Karen admitted that they often engage in this behavior, sometimes unconsciously.
You mean like giving the silent treatment, withholding affection,
Yeah.
using guilt trips to try and like manipulate their behavior?
Exactly. And Karen even expressed feeling like a bad person because she realized how often she punished Mike, her partner, for not meeting her expectations.
It's so relatable though.
It is.
Like we've all been there, right?
Right.
Feeling frustrated and resorting to these tactics because we don't know like how else to communicate our needs.
But here's the thing. According to Claudia, punishment never actually works. It only creates resentment and distance in the relationship.
So instead of punishing them for not being who we want them to be, we need to focus on understanding who they actually are.
Exactly. If we connect this back to the idea of men being, internally motivated, it makes perfect sense. Punishment only reinforces their perception that they're not being understood or appreciated for who they are.
Okay, so that makes sense. But what about this Princess Grace gene that Kimberly mentioned? This idea that some women are just naturally more alluring to men, more capable of inspiring like love and devotion. Is there any truth to that?
It's a fascinating concept, isn't it? This
Yeah.
idea that some women possess this magical quality that makes them, irresistible to men. But Claudia, she debunks this myth beautifully. She emphasizes that there's no such thing as a Princess Grace gene. It's not about genetics or some mystical feminine energy. It's about understanding and appreciating the unique dynamics between men and women.
So are you saying that anyone can learn how to be a queen in her own right?
Absolutely. The Queen's Code, as Claudia calls it, isn't about manipulating men or conforming to some outdated ideal of femininity.
Right.
It's about developing a deep understanding of men and learning how to communicate with them in a way that creates a genuine connection and partnership.
This all sounds amazing in theory, but I'm sure many of our listeners are wondering, like, how do we actually do that? Where's the instruction manual for understanding men?
That's a great question.
Right.
And the good news is that Claudia does offer some practical tools and techniques in the source material. But before we dive into those, it's crucial to acknowledge the emotional toll that these ingrained patterns of thinking can have on women.
You mean the hurt, the resentment, the self-doubt that can build up over years of miscommunication and unmet expectations?
Exactly. Both Kimberly and Karen, they expressed a deep sense of regret for the ways they had treated the men in their lives. And that regret, while painful, it can be a powerful catalyst for change.
It's like they're finally waking up to the realization that their old ways of thinking and behaving haven't been serving them. And they're open to exploring a new path, even if it feels a little scary at first.
And this is where self-compassion becomes so important. Claudia, she reminds us that we've all been doing the best we could with the information we had at the time.
Right.
Beating ourselves up for past mistakes won't help us move forward.
So what's the antidote to this self-blame? Is it just a matter of forgiving ourselves and forgetting about it?
It's more than that. It's about acknowledging our own humanity recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Right.
And it's about extending that same grace and understanding to the men in our lives.
Which brings us back to the power of that good reason question.
Yeah.
By consistently choosing to understand rather than judge, we create space for compassion and connection to flourish.
Then in that space, amazing things can happen. We start to see men for who they truly are, not just who we expect them to be. And in doing so, we might discover hidden depths and qualities that we never even knew existed.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of understanding, of shifting our perspective, of practicing self-compassion, but we still need those practical tools, those concrete steps we can take to start applying this Queen's Code in our own lives.
Don't worry, we're getting there.
Okay.
The good stuff is just getting started. We'll be exploring those communication techniques, those magic words, and the secrets to creating lasting partnership with men.
Okay, I'm all ears. But for now, let's give our listeners a moment to digest everything we've covered so far.
Right.
What stands out to you? What resonates? What makes you want to argue with us?
Yeah.
Take a moment to ponder that. And we'll be back soon to dive even deeper into the Queen's Code.
Welcome back.
I feel like we've explored some pretty deep concepts from the Queen's Code so far. Ditching that whole perfect person myth and embracing the good reason, and even learning about that fascinating single focus way of thinking.
Definitely a lot to unpack.
Yeah. But now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. How can we actually apply all this wisdom to our daily interactions with men?
Well, one of the most powerful tools Claudia introduces, and we touched on this earlier, is that single focus listening.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds simple, but it can be a real game changer in how we communicate with men.
You're right. We did mention it, but it's so important that it's definitely worth diving deeper, especially since it goes against how we often communicate.
Oh, for sure.
Especially us ladies. We love to multitask, jump between ideas, and let's be honest, sometimes we even finish each other's sentences.
All the time.
Right.
Yeah, and while those communication styles might work great, among women, they can actually hinder our conversations with men. Remember that vault analogy that Karen used? Imagine a man going deep into that vault to retrieve a valuable answer, and every time he gets close, he's interrupted with another question or a rephrased question or even unsolicited advice. It's enough to drive anyone crazy.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see how that would be super frustrating.
Yeah.
So single focus listening is about resisting that urge to interrupt, to rephrase, to jump in with our own thoughts before he's even had a chance to fully express himself. It's about giving him the space and the silence to go deep into that vault and emerge with his treasure.
You got it. And this type of listening requires a real shift in mindset. We have to let go of the expectation that conversations with men will follow that same back and forth rapid fire style that we're used to with our girlfriends.
So it's more about creating a space for him to think, to process, and to articulate his thoughts and feelings without feeling pressured to conform to our expectations.
Yeah.
It's about respecting his pace and his unique way of communicating.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another crucial element of effective communication, asking the right questions. Claudia emphasizes the importance of starting from a place of genuine curiosity rather than judgment or accusation.
So instead of demanding, why did you do that? Which, let's be real, kind of sounds like we're about to launch into a lecture.
Yeah, totally.
We might try a gentler approach, I'm curious about your decision to do X. Would you be willing to share your thinking with me?
That's a great example. The tone makes all the difference. The key is to approach the conversation as an opportunity to learn and understand his perspective, not as an interrogation or a chance to prove him wrong.
And this ties back to that good reason principle we discussed, right?
It does, yeah.
By assuming there's a valid reason behind his actions, we're more likely to ask open-ended questions that invite him to share his thoughts and feelings.
You nailed it. This kind of questioning can be truly transformative. It allows the man to feel heard and respected, and it gives the woman valuable insights into his inner world.
It's like we're finally speaking the same language.
Yeah.
Even if it takes a bit of practice to become fluent, right?
Oh, yeah.
But speaking of language, Claudia does mention these intriguing magic words, right? The language of heroes, I think she calls it. Can you tell us more about those?
Ah, yes, the language of heroes. Now, the source material, it doesn't reveal the the specific words,
Right.
but it does hint at their power. Claudia suggests that these words, when spoken with sincerity and from the right place within ourselves, can inspire men to act in their highest and best way.
Okay, I'm intrigued. But before we go pinning all our hopes on magic words,
Okay.
I'm curious about how they actually work. Is it like some kind of Jedi mind trick?
Uh-huh.
Or are we talking about a deeper shift in how we communicate our needs and desires?
It's definitely more than just memorizing a list of words and hoping for the best. Claudia emphasizes that these magic words are not a manipulation tactic. They only work when used with genuine respect and understanding for men's nature.
So it's not about finding the right words to control or change him. It's about finding the words that resonate with his core values and motivations, the words that inspire him to step into his full potential as a partner, a leader, a man.
Exactly. And this requires, a level of self-awareness and a willingness to challenge our own biases and assumptions about men. It's about recognizing that they have their own unique strengths and gifts to offer, and our words can either help them shine or dim their light.
This all sounds incredibly powerful, but I can imagine some listeners might be feeling a bit overwhelmed. It's a lot to take in.
It is a journey, not a quick fix. But the rewards, as we've seen from Kimberly and Karen's experiences, can be profound. It's about transforming our relationships with men from sources of frustration and disappointment to sources of joy, connection, and mutual fulfillment.
So to wrap things up, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember from this deep dive into the Queen's Code?
I think it's this. What if the key to unlocking fulfilling relationships with men lies in shifting our perspective from judgment to curiosity, from punishment to understanding, from expecting them to be perfect to appreciating them for who they truly are?
Absolutely. And we've barely scratched the surface of the Queen's Code today, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and maybe even sparked a few aha moments. Now, as you go out into the world, I want you to consider this. How might your life change if you started approaching the men in your life with genuine curiosity and a belief in their inherent goodness? What new possibilities might open up if you embrace this shift in perspective? Food for thought, dear listeners. Until next time, keep diving deep.